Well, good day, everyone, everywhere, and special greetings to all those seated in heavenly places in Jesus, our Messiah. The name of this broadcast is Cross the Border, and this is our weekly prophecy reality edition. The rest of the week, we just kind of go through the Bible every day, so I hope that everybody's enjoying the regular Bible studies, but it's nice to take a day off in the middle of the week here. Turn on the studio cam. So if you come over to the chat room, there's a little YouTube streaming window there in the right-hand column, and you can see my face and anything else I might put on the screen if you want to join us there. Or you can just keep listening to the audio right where you're at. But, well, we would like to see you there. Today, let's see, my good friend Michael, my former producer, sent me a couple articles. So I think we're going to start off with those. Article number 1. Oh, there it is. No shirt, no swipe, no service. And okay, cash is a miracle, so why are more businesses refusing it? That's a good question. And we have the answer. I've read this article, very interesting, so I'm going to just give it all to you. For years, small businesses have asked customers to pay cash, set credit card minimums, or added a surcharge on cash card transactions in an effort to defray the premiums imposed by companies like MasterCard and Visa. Now an increasing number of businesses are doing the opposite. Head out of state offices, head out of slate offices for lunch. Okay, whatever that means, I don't even know. But go to lunch and you might wind up at Dos Toros, a local burrito mini chain. For coffee, you might pick Devoción, a Colombian-born coffee house with an airy storefront. In either case, you'd be confronted with the same demand. Pay with plastic. Stores are eliminating cash registers and coin rolls in pursuit of what they say is a safer, more streamlined payment process, and one that most of their customers want to use anyway. At Dos Toros, co-founder said that more than half of the shop's customers used cash when its first location opened in Manhattan in 2009. By the beginning of this year, that number had fallen to just 15%. At that point, the various hassles of dealing with cash, employee training, banking fees, armored truck pickups, and the occasional robbery outweighed the cost of credit card fees on those transactions. The shift wound up being more or less revenue neutral, Kremer said, but it saved a lot of time and trouble. Dos Toros, New York locations have been fully cash-free since, I guess, last winter. So you can see some of the logic there. And what about customers who don't carry a card? You agonize over that, Kremer said, after talking to him of absorbing the flow at the cash register. We felt like almost everyone who used cash had a card. Yeah, it just hasn't been an issue. Cash is still used in the majority of purchases under $10, according to research by the San Francisco Fed. Those are the big money powers. That's the Antichrist money power that rules in the world. The Fed, that is. They call themselves the Federal Reserve. The name is a deception for all of you Americans out there who think that the Federal Reserve is part of the United States government. It is not. They control the world money power for the Antichrist shadow government. I put a name on it there for you. Well, read your Bible. People laugh at me, or they just think it's outrageous that I would say such things. But if you're a Christian, do you really believe what God's Word says in chapter 13 of the Revelation, where it outlines that at the end, before Christ returns, that the Antichrist is going to control the money so much so that everyone is going to be required to worship the beast or its image, or the Antichrist himself, or they won't be able to buy or sell. Yeah, buy or sell, because that's what it's all getting down to. Buying and selling, you must have the mark. And I got a little personal experience I'm going through with that right now. Yeah, we'll talk about that when I finish the article here. By 2016, it was down 3%. 3 in 10. Okay. Cash is still, oh, that's where we're at. According to San Francisco Fed. But its use is falling sharply. In 2011, cash accounted for 4 in 10 purchases in the Fed's consumer payment diary. By 2016, it was down to 3 in 10. Well, I'm one of those 3 in 10. Starbucks experimented with cashless stores in Seattle earlier this year. No word on whether the pilot will expand. Even farmers markets are using Jack Dorsey's payment device, Square, and cardless mobile payments like Apple Pay are pushing into the market too. The greenback, of course, remains legal tender for all debts, public and private. It says so right there on the bills in your wallet if you still carry any, but until you've made a deal with someone, you don't have any debt. Courts have sided again and again with merchants who refuse coins or currency on a reasonable basis. A Treasury spokesman explained, such as when doing so increases efficiency, prevents incompatibility problems with the equipment employed to accept or count the money, or improves security. That's why an ice cream shop can refuse to take $100 bills, or why a transit agency can direct bus drivers only to accept coins for fares. So there we have a little precedent set by the courts. This trend toward thinner wallets makes it easy to forget what a miracle cash is. Cash is profoundly democratic, said Bill Maurer, and the dean of the School of Social Sciences at UC Irvine and the author of How Would You Like to Pay? It can be given by anyone, accepted by anyone, settled and cleared instantaneously. One of the central bank's great achievements, he observed, was making sure that transactions involving cash and checks would be settled at par, meaning that there's no transaction cost to paying that way. As late as the 1930s, banks were still charging interchange fees on checks. Going back, there's a little bit of history there. Almost 90 years old. With plastic and online payments, that's rarely the case, he says. There's always a middleman in non-cash payments, which is driving what Mark called a Cambrian explosion in the payments industry. Apps, plastics, and crypto are suddenly everywhere. Sweden is building a cashless society. In China, mobile payment apps are the dominant form of payment at countless establishments. In Shanghai, the venture capitalist Eric Lee told me a story about trying to get his morning coffee the morning after a storm had knocked out the internet on his block. No one could buy a cup of coffee because no one was carrying cash. But it would be hard to find anyone more gung-ho about the abolition of cash than credit card companies. Last summer, for example, listen to this, folks, Visa announced a $10,000 reward to 50 businesses that would give up cash entirely. We're going to bribe you in your business $10,000 to give up cash. What concerns me about a cashless future is how much it benefits Wall Street. Stacy Mitchell, co-director of the Institute for Local Self-Reliance, wrote to me in an email, they can charge swipe fees of 2 to 3%, not because that's what the service actually costs, because it actually costs practically nothing, like nothing, but because they have a monopoly power. It is a form of rent taking. Feel like a slave yet? It's one thing I love about God's word. And you get into when he set up his government in Israel, everyone had land. It was a sign of freedom and liberty. You were not a slave to anyone as long as your family had land. The state couldn't take your property away for non-payment of what they call property taxes, which is actually rent to the state, because the state just put a higher claim on your property than you have by taxing it under threat of duress or loss of life, liberty, or property. So how does it feel to be a slave? It's a form of rent taking. Most consumers do seem to be embracing and even driving the shift. I called up my friend, a software engineer in Silicon Valley, who, when I met him decades ago, was one of the first people I knew to shun paper currency, in part a legacy, he says, of growing up in France where using cash meant coming away with pockets full of heavy coins. He still uses cash with his dry cleaner, kind of credit card guilt, but generally said he would much sooner get stranded without cash than without his phone. I doubt he's the only one who sees it that way. Yes, indeed. I think I'd still rather be stranded without cash than my phone, but I kind of do like to have both. Advocates, but you know what? If you're stranded without your phone, hey, everybody else has got one. Someone will let you use their phone. I found that out too. Okay, continuing here. Advocates for the gradual abolition of cash view it basically as a sloppy medium that enables corruption, black market transactions, money laundering, and tax evasion, not to mention a wide range of petty and serious theft. Kenan Rogoff, a Harvard professor and author of The Curse of Cash, has argued that cash is important for privacy. Well, you don't find too many academics saying something like that, but he argued that cash is important for privacy. Amen. And useful in disasters. But he wrote in the Wall Street Journal last year the Treasury could easily phase out hundreds and fifties. Yeah, now the $100 bill is only worth what a $20 used to be worth, 50 years ago. So like, they're really phasing out $20 bills. They're going to leave you with what used to be worth $1 or less, or pennies actually, when you see how much. And plus, as inflation increases, $100 bills are not going to be worth that much. So if they phase out hundreds and fifties, you could be walking around with pennies. Realistically speaking, what we would consider pennies 50 years ago. Okay, continuing here. Yes, they could easily phase out hundreds and fifties to reduce tax evasion and crime. Oh yeah, that'll work. Less cash might also make it easier for the Fed to push negative interest rates. And remember who the Fed is. They're not your friendly government, they're not the guys you're paying. These are the money powers. These are the Vatican bankers working for the Antichrist, whether they know it or not. Most of them don't have a clue. There's no grand conspiracy among people that work at banks. They're just a bunch of unlearned adults like most of the rest of us, okay? So they want to push negative interest rates. Encouraging lending in its aftermath of a crisis. But many of hard cash's negative externalities, criminality, thefts, now he's going to break down and tell us about okay, well, lost that word. But anyway, let's continue here. Also exist in the virtual realm. Yeah. Blockchain currencies like Bitcoin can be used to buy illegal drugs, for example. Credit card data is hacked from one company or another every few months. What's more, some scholars contend that the anonymity and flexibility of cash is a safeguard. I like that. We increasingly live in glass houses. Virtually everything we do is recorded, tracked, or monitored, argued Jonathan Barth, a historian of capitalism at Arizona State. Even if we lived in an ideal world of complete corporate and governmental benevolence, bad actors might later grab a hold of those institutions and thus inherit, he says, even if we lived. Well, the bad actors have already grabbed a hold. As a matter of fact, they control it. And I think there's a little bit of God's wisdom there that he allows evil men to control the money because they love money. Yeah. And it can only corrupt them more than they're already corrupted. What he's talking about is to some extent happening in China. Yes, keeping up with the news in China, where purchases are closely monitored and debts might prevent you from, say, buying a plane ticket. That hits home for me because I can no longer get on a plane in America and even fly from one state to another because I am not a socialist, because I have not volunteered to participate in the socialist security monetary system. Even though there's no law that requires me to, I'm still being excluded from Well, because all banks, the Fed now has a monopoly on banks, so you can't open up your own bank, and there's no bank that will allow me to bank without being a socialist first. So it may be a free country, but you lose a lot of privileges, immunities, and things that have been taken over, of which the Antichrist has taken a monopoly of, like the banking, and ever since 9/11. Speaking of yesterday, then, and all of the nonsense, the reiteration of the government narrative of what happened, kind of makes me want to puke. But you can see why everybody believes that now, because for how many years has it been now? 17 years they've been pushing that narrative, and all of the alternative narratives have been pretty much quieted down to where nobody pays attention to them anymore. But what can you expect? This is the world we live in, and there are no surprises here. God's Word has told us everything in advance, so let's not be surprised that what God said would happen is happening. In America, though approximately 75% of the population remains unbanked, well, that's not 75%, 7.5% of the population remains unbanked. Well, let's see, they're counting me in. 7.5% of the population remains unbanked. I do not have a personal bank account, and thereby excluded, for the most part, from the perks or convenience that come with top-shelf financial products. It's a more diverse group of people than you think. Lisa Severin told me for her, the unbanking of America. Severin worked at a check-cashing business in South Bronx, and for a payday lender in Oakland, she found that the fastest-growing group of people getting payday loans, an extremely expensive form of cash advance, was college-educated homeowners making $60,000 to $70,000 a year. Banks understand how expensive banking is, and they do understand who they're excluding. Your ice cream shop choosing to go cashless doesn't recognize that they may be excluding a portion of their market. Only Massachusetts has a law requiring merchants to accept cash. The 1978 Discrimination Against Cash Buyers Amendment, and it is essentially unenforced. It's the experts worry the decline of cash could lure consumers into risky financial contracts. While most concerns about cash business focus on issues affecting the unbanked, said a senior manager at the nonprofit Center for Financial Services Innovation, actually putting plastic in people's hands isn't the primary issue. Concerning more adoption of card products by pushing the cashless society could compromise people's financial health. We're forcing a segment of the population to act in ways they otherwise would not. And that's true. If you had to pay for everything with cash, oh yeah, you would not live beyond your means. You would learn how to live debt-free, and yeah, it works. Believe me. Take the overdraft fee, a punishment for desperate or careless customers that netted banks $15 billion in 2016. As many as half of overdraft fees aren't assessed at the ATM, where customers can see their balance, but at the point of sale. Debit card transactions at the counters of shops and restaurants. The majority of overdraft fees, the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau reported in 2014, came on transactions of 24 or under, not people stretching to make a big purchase. And here he misspoke. He says, Arna says, let's see, he said debit cards, I believe. But debit cards stop if you run out of money. They refuse your payment. Yeah. So it has to be a credit card. Yeah, he put debit card transactions. It should be credit card transactions. But debit cards are MasterCard, Visa too, but they're supposed to stop when you don't have enough money in your account to cover the transaction. So they can't charge you overdraft fees. Okay, well, that was an interesting article. And as I was telling everyone, I applied for, because took my daughter to the airport this Sunday so she could go visit family in Missouri. And I applied for her and myself for passports, so we have ID to get on planes if we want to fly somewhere. And she got hers after a little finagling. But I haven't got mine yet. And we applied for these, I think, March 6th. And they did call me at one time to question me about my non-socialist status. And the guy said, well, if you have any questions, this is my number. You're calling me. You're the one with the questions. I guess my only question would be, and I assumed then he was asking me questions so he could fill out his form and they could send my passport to me, but I've got no passport to this day. So I guess when he said, if you have any questions, here's my number, I guess I need to call him because I have the question is, where is the passport that I paid for? Yeah, so I can't get on a plane or anything, leave one state to go to another state or leave the country for that matter, unless I become an illegal, what do you call it? I'm not going to be an illegal alien. I'm going to be an illegal something, man that leaves the country. What do you call that? Yeah, I'm going to be an illegal border crosser, I guess, because I don't think they'll let me across the border into Mexico without an ID of some sort that they're happy with, and I don't have anything they're happy with. So thus I was trying to get a passport. So I guess I'm going to have to find that number and call that guy and see what happened there, but I'll keep you updated on that. Okay, well, let me check the chat room, see if we got any comments or questions. Smoke says, can't spray bugs anymore. Illegal without permission, and the chemical which is now illegal unless it is Roundup or something. Yeah, well, in California, you've needed a license to spray your crops with anything for a long time. But it's free. You can go down and get one, but you just have to tell them where you're spraying and when you're spraying and what you're spraying when you spray it. Yeah. How much was the passport? He said, I think it was $180 for the passport that I haven't got yet. Yeah. Okay, Johnny Cash forced to change his name to Johnny MasterCard. Okay, WW, that's funny stuff there. Well, that's all I get in the room here. Let's see. Look for Myrtle Beach. That would be, oh yes, the hurricane thing going on there. Well, yeah, may the Almighty protect each and every one of you out there on the coast that are looking forward to a hurricane. Not looking forward gladly, but hopefully looking forward and taking adequate precautions. And make sure you have plenty of cash on hand, speaking of cash. Okay, well, I just want to shout out to everyone in the chat room, say hi to Michael, say thank you for sending me that article. I got one more of Michael's articles to cover, in the next hour, and some other things. And of course, in the second hour, we're going to continue with the history of apocalyptic interpretation. So stick around, we've got a lot more to come. We'll be back in a few minutes.
Behold, God is my salvation. I will trust, I will not be afraid. Behold, God is my strength.
Hear it first on FirstAmendmentRadio.com and FirstAmendmentRadio.net. Gold and silver is tremendously undervalued. Global demand vastly exceeds mine supply by more than 60% annually. There is little in the financial world more certain than a coming explosion in the prices of gold and silver. The U.S. dollar continues to lose value and respect as the world's reserve currency. Our nation faces challenges on many fronts, and a day doesn't pass without another economist bringing forth warnings of impending economic calamity. There has never been a better time than right now to acquire physical gold and silver. Discount Gold and Silver Trading was founded on the principles of truth and honesty. We believe in providing a quality product, quality service, and most importantly, competitive pricing. We provide all forms of precious metals, including American gold, silver, platinum, and rare investment and circulated coins. Silver bars, rounds, and 90% silver bags are on hand for the silver investor. Gold, self-directed IRAs are available. Call Discount Gold and Silver Trading at 1-800-375-4188. Toll free, that's 1-800-375-4188. The program you are listening to is 100% sponsored by you, the listener, on this First Amendment Rights media channel. If you are admonished or nurtured by the Bible and ministry programs, we ask you to give. If some voice a cause that you are passionate about, we ask you to give. If you believe in any of these, we ask you to support them as you would a missionary on a continual basis. These programs are not commercially viable and must be supported by those faithful to the cause of truth. Look for the button to sponsor your favorite programs on our listen and schedule pages. Then when you subscribe, we will also give you unlimited archive access to all of our programs. We ask you to give much less than a tithe so that you may also send support directly to a particular program, host, or cause, and anywhere else the Spirit may lead you. Do all to the glory of our God and Creator, for His holy nation, the only kingdom that will last forever. Thank you for listening.
The book of Revelation says, "The spirit of prophecy is the testimony of Jesus Christ." This is at the very heart of FirstAmendmentRadio.com. In that spirit, we have created the Prophecy Reality News app for all of your mobile devices, streaming First Amendment Radio 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Available for your Apple, Android device, and smartphone, absolutely free. Get the Prophecy Reality News app installed today so you can listen to First Amendment Radio wherever you are. The Prophecy Reality News app. Get it now.
Welcome back. You're listening Across the Border. This is our Prophecy Reality Edition. And we're just going through some news items here. My next item is YouTube. Yeah. Imagine that. YouTube back in the news, suspending more accounts. YouTube shuts down pro-Syrian government channels. How could they do that on YouTube? Yeah. Let's check that out here. Okay, video streaming giant appeared to suspend the accounts of the Ministry of Defense, Syrian presidency, and SANA, whatever that is. YouTube has suspended the accounts of at least 3 media outlets run by the Syrian government weeks after a report claimed the channels were violating U.S. sanctions and generating revenues from ads. There we go, they got them. Yeah, sanctions. They put sanctions. And now YouTube, because I guess that's an American company, they can't generate revenue from ads on countries that have sanctions against them. There you go. The video giant appeared to suspend accounts of Syria's public international news organization, SANA, the Ministry of Defense, and the Syrian presidency. All 3 accounts appeared on Monday with a message which read, "This account has been terminated due to a legal complaint," or "This account has been terminated for a violation of YouTube's terms of service." The Damascus-based SANA TV's channel also appeared to be taken down with a message reading, "This page isn't available. Sorry about that. Try searching for something else." Well, these are all harbingers of our future as Christians and people who will not participate in the Antichrist monetary system that will be coming to you mandatorily. You will become a mandatory participant, or you will not be on YouTube or anywhere else, because they're going to have, the Antichrist is going to have sanctions against people who will not participate in his Federal Reserve or whatever they call it in your country. Federal Reserve Antichrist, mark of the beast monetary system soon will become mandatory and will require worship of the beast or its image or of the Antichrist himself. All these things will be mandatory. Most people not worried about it. You know, as you can see, when most people volunteer for something, well, then it becomes mandatory for those who don't volunteer. It's like driver's licenses. Did you know that only by law, only people carrying passengers for hire or cargo are considered to be under the profession of driver and need a professional license to drive? And that everyone, like if you're getting in your car with your family to go to church on Sunday, you're not a driver. Your children, unless they belong to the state, they're not passengers. They're your family. You're traveling together. Now, the state thinks they own your children. And maybe they do. Maybe you sign them over. Maybe you send them to the public school and you've made your children wards of the state. Because that's part of it. When you send your children to school, to public school, and you drop them off at the curb there or however they get there, but you consent to it, you are making them wards of the state, at least for the time that they're in school, if not more than that, but at least for that time. You see how this works? And how about all of the broken up families that have their children in custody battles at the court? Is the court now the children are now the ward of the court? They're making the decisions. The parents are they're saying we're wards of the state. You see, getting all tangled up in this mess here. And that's the Antichrist thinks it owns you, and everything that you have is theirs, and your children are theirs. So, and when you sign up for socialist benefits, when you went down, because a lot of people think, well, I'm a conservative, I'm not a socialist, so they participate. They participate by giving or receiving or both, and but you know what? They're carrying that card around, or the equivalent of it, by having that number imprinted on their brain. Yeah, you know what number I'm talking about. That one. If that's you, if that's your identification, see, your identification can be stolen. Did you know that? But you could buy insurance against an identity theft if you're a socialist. If you're not a socialist, like me, okay, nobody can steal my identity. Come on, try to steal my identity. You can't, because it's not wrapped up in a number, and I'm not identified with the state. I don't belong to them. I don't want to belong to them. I am competent enough to take care of myself according to the wisdom that God has given me. And I trust that God will take care of me, that he'll provide for me. And if he doesn't, well, then God has a problem. Imagine that, saying something like that. And some people might even argue, they might go, well, God provides through the beast system, because they don't call governments beasts like the Bible does. But all the governments are typified as beasts of one sort or another in the Bible. And it's because, they don't have a soul. That's one reason. Anyway, let's jump to this next article. Oh yeah, we're on the next article. Looking forward to the future when it's coming. I'm on YouTube now and First Amendment Radio, and with my Prophecy Reality page there, and I'm already unpopular enough because nobody really wants to believe. Even most Christians are following some delusion that's been spun by the CounterReformation, Antichrist Army of the Jesuits, that is futurism, and then there's a few that even believe in preterism. Yeah. But I am a Protestant historicist. That's what I am. So anyway, there it is. They took down, what's his name, Alex Jones. And I think they did that just to make him more famous than he already was. Because he lost nothing. They just made him more famous. Yeah. If they take me down, nobody would care. Really. because they don't like me to begin with. I'm not out there. I'm not one of their shills. There are people that do believe that Alex Jones is a New World Order Jesuit shill. Okay, and yeah, that's the future. Won't be on YouTube. I guess I'll just have to go out on my 2 feet and witness to the truth. But it's like the whole thing with the applying for a passport. And they called me up, and I'm pretty sure they're investigating me now. So I guess they're going to probably, I'm on the list. They're going to come and get me first. How do you like that? And you know what? Do I care? I'm already an old man, and they aren't outright killing too many people yet. I guess they could disappear me, but I don't think they're really worried about me, because, how much effect am I having out here in the world? Not very much. And it doesn't matter. I don't do this for effect or YouTube numbers. I don't have 10,000 or 100,000 or 10,000 or 5,000 subscribers on YouTube. And if I were a socialist and I did fill out their Inquisition form every year, well, they would give me money back. As a matter of fact, I'd probably get a lot more money if I just became a socialist, because I have an adult retarded son that lives with me, and I don't get nothing from the state for him or the government or food stamps and socialist medical care and all that stuff that they give you. And I don't get none of that. I don't want none of it, because I figure it this way, I'm going to walk and live by faith. And if God can't take care of me, then he ain't a God that's worth me worshiping. But, he does take care of me. He has taken care of me, and he will take care of me. And if he doesn't, well, I'll still worship him. But he is taking care of me. What did David said? I've never seen the righteous go hungry or begging for bread. Well, if I sign up for Social Security, guess what I'm doing? I would be begging for bread. If I signed up for socialist, what do they call it? Socialist. They have it under the Social Security program for disabled people. See, I would be begging. I would be a beggar to the beast government. And I know a lot of people justify that and say, well, I can't trust God to. Well, of course, they don't say it that way. They put it this way. They say, well, that's God's way of providing for me. Well, if God couldn't do it without the state, he couldn't provide for you, he couldn't give you some work to do, or you couldn't rely on your family. Look at like the kind of family government that God set up for his people, which is totally ignored. Which is really supposed to be emulated in the church. What God did in Israel is supposed to be emulated in the church at large, because the true church, is the true Israel of God today. The 70 weeks have expired. Yeah, that's true. And national Israel, as a set-apart people to God, its time was ended. It was prophesied by Daniel the prophet. And no, there's no gap. I'm sorry. The week that followed the 69th was, guess what? Guess what it was? Got a prize for you if you can figure that one out. What was the week that followed the 69th week in the prophecy? Come on, somebody in the chat room, come on. What was the week that followed the 69th week in prophecy? Yeah. Yes, corporate says supplemental security income, SSI, that's it, that's the stuff that I could collect. As a matter of fact, they would give me like 4 years back pay if I signed up. That would be like cash bonanza, baby. I'd probably have $20,000 or $30,000 or something. They do that. They want to reward you. They want you really badly. The Antichrist wants you. It doesn't matter what the cost is, because he's not going to pay it anyway. Because they just create more money, and by creating more money, because he has total control of the money over the whole earth, he just robs everybody on earth to buy your soul. What a deal the devil has, man. He can buy your soul and make everyone else pay for it for him. Because the devil has no money. He just robs everybody else. Every time they borrow another dollar in America or create another dollar out of thin air, they're just robbing everybody on the planet. And then get this scam. They create this money out of thin air, and then they charge you interest on it. Yeah. They get you coming and going. They rob you when they create the money, and then they give it to you and make you pay interest on it. What a scam. I mean, Satan has got this thing figured out, doesn't he? Yeah. And you know, Christians think I'm crazy. Even Christians, all these futurist Christians out there, because they think the Antichrist is going to show up one day and magically he's going to make all this stuff happen in 3.5 years, and then it's going to be the end of the world. No, man, Satan, you know, has been working for generations, hundreds of years on this monetary system. I mean, even at the beginning of America, he was trying to get in here with a central bank. And it took him over 100 years, Satan's, you know, spiritual, transgenerational conspiracy. Yeah. It took him over 100 years to take over, to get his Federal Reserve coup of the U.S. Treasury. And, well, we see what's happened since then. Yeah. You can read all about it. You know, I've got several books out there. You can read about a lot of that. I have a chapter in my book and many articles on my website at crosstheborder.org. I think Mark of the Beast 2018 might be one. I think that's from a chapter in my book. The Rapture will be canceled, and believe me, the Raptures will be canceled. All three of them. I mean, I started out just going, well, you know, this pre-trib to rapture, but I'm not so sure about that. And then, so I ran with that for years, thinking it's post-trib. But upon further investigation and a lot of deep investigation for going on, 13 years now investigating prophecy, and I found out there's no 7-year tribulation outlined in the Bible anywhere. That's all counter-reformation. Yeah, Jesuit counter-reformation, Antichrist, eschatology developed just for you. Just for the Protestant world, to pull them away from the reality that the Catholic Church is the foretold great apostasy. Yeah. And that the seat of the papacy is the foretold seat of the man of sin, the Antichrist. Yeah. You know, the papacy knew 500 years ago that Protestants were saying that. As a matter of fact, the fathers of the Protestant Reformation were saying that and teaching it in their churches. And they said, man, we got to come up with a plan. We can't let this go on. We got to change people's minds about this. So they started working on it, and their plan has worked very well because everybody's forgotten now. They've forgotten history. It's called the Antichrist War on Christian history. That's what it is. On true Christian history, war on history, because if people knew history, well, then they would recognize that great apostasy. You know, now, today, that great apostasy is 2 billion strong. It's bigger than any other apostasy out there. I mean, you got the little Mormons over there, and you got the Seventh-day Adventists over here, and you got apostate this and apostate that, and you got the New Apostolic Reformation, and you got all the charismaniacs, and you got all these apostasies going on all over the place. But still, the biggest one, and the one that's behind them all, as a matter of fact, slaps them on the back, encourages them to, with their apostasy. That is the greatest apostasy out there, and almost 2 billion strong. That is the Roman Catholic Church. Not the church that Jesus said, I will build my church. Yeah, he said, I will build my church. Well, they built a church too. It's called the Roman Catholic Church, the Roman Universal Church. See, because it's Roman, it's not really universal, is it? Because their head is in Rome. They said, well, the bishop of Rome is superior to all bishops. As a matter of fact, he is the bishop of bishops. As a matter of fact, he's the vicar of Christ on earth. He speaks for God, ex cathedra. Yeah, he speaks for God. So he's like the head bishop, the head honcho. No, he's not. That's one of their big lies. And plus all of their murders and adulteries and their fornications and their love of money, and they really rule the world today, just as the scripture says. So people go, well, I don't see it. Well, that's why the Revelation says the beast that was and is not yet is. Yeah, because that power, the papacy that ruled for 1260 years, they think that was vanquished, after the effects of the French Revolution. And by 1870, the papacy had lost all power, all in the world. It was like only a shadow of it remained. But that shadow, ever since the fall of the papacy, the Jesuits have been working behind the scenes very hard. That Jesuit Army, stealthily working in plain sight, basically, that Jesuit Army to overthrow just the simple idea that the papacy is the seat of the Antichrist and the Roman Catholic Church is that great apostasy. And tell people today, they're waiting for a new great apostasy. They think, well, this is it. This is it, because people are apostatizing today. But no, people have been apostatizing forever, basically. But there is a great apostasy which has a man who's called the man of sin at its head. And it appeared. And the reformers identified it. And now it's only greater today. It wasn't 2 billion when it reared its ugly head 500 years ago, and it was identified by the pre-Reformation and Reformation fathers as that great apostasy, and the seat of the papacy as being the seat of the man of sin, the Antichrist. But people, they forgot, and now they believed a lie, the whole Counter-Reformation thing. Counter-Reformation, Left Behind, Antichrist scenario. You can read all about that in my book, When the Third Temple is Built. They might build some kind of temple over there. It seems like it might happen. And